Casey Brown, welcome to the EO360 podcast.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Casey, I should know this, but I don't. Where are you from?
Ohio.
Ohio. You have so I'm from Boston. I take it back. I live in Boston or just south of Boston. I'm not from here, but you sound like you have a bit of like a Boston, I don't know, Dorchester sort of gonna kick your ass sort of attitude.
Yeah, I would say, it's much more in the speed and the attitude than it is any kind of accent for sure. But yeah, I listen to podcasts on 2 or 2.5x speed, and I try to speak at the same pace pretty much. So I'm thinking fast, I'm moving fast, I'm talking fast. They don't have time to slow down. And
I would not want to run into you in a dark alley. That's
my
all I'm saying.
brother, can I do a light curse on this podcast?
You can. Clearly, you haven't listened to any of the podcasts. I've had some far worse than light curses in here, given the topics of discussion.
Well, I mean,
but yes,
the time is early. We got time yet, but
I like how you warn people, because if there's kids in the car right now, they know. Okay,
right,
that's
turn
the
it
wrong.
down for a second.
This is the wrong episode.
It's a light curse, though.
Okay.
My youngest brother says about me, not only does my sister Casey not take any shit, she goes around looking for shit not to take.
Yeah, I like how you categorize shit as a light curse.
Is that not a light curse?
No, I don't know, really. I've never categorized them.
It's only like a couple big boys, and shit ain't on the list.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I don't know if this is a sign of our times, but there's a few of the big ones that seem to be coming back.
Oh, I know, and they've become very pedestrian among the kids. I hear some stuff, and I'm like, well, in my day, nobody said that.
And it's fascinating, the things we used to say, and I don't mean to categorize you with me, but I'll tell you, things I used to say in the 80s, no, I didn't say them, but other people said them, in the 80s, and now my kids look at me like, you can't say that.
No,
you can't.
Yeah, that is not, that's dead.
Which I don't understand. It's just, that's why I need to retire soon, because it gets to a point where I think the likelihood of me getting sued at work is just increasing exponentially.
Yeah.
So Casey, hey.
Hi.
That was a waste of 5 minutes of our listeners' time.
I don't know. Somebody might want to steal that shit not to take line.
Yeah, that's true. Gold there. Also, the whole concept of categorizing curse words is kind of interesting. Something you can do on the weekend, maybe.
Yeah.
Let me tell people who you are and why you're here.
Great.
This is Casey Brown. CaseyBrown.com. Casey is a pricing expert. She's written this book called Fearless Pricing. And I saw Casey speak at an event, and it was enlightening for me. And the reason I say that is because the main thing that I started thinking about is you pointed out, I think you asked the question, how many of you have had a real strategic conversation in your company about pricing? And I didn't care what everybody else said. I know I haven't. And I don't know why. We've talked about pricing. Do we put it on our website or not? And we're like, I don't know. We know we're supposed to, but we haven't. And then we talk about like variable pricing. We talk about different pricing models for my software company. But we haven't really, we talk about discounts and, this sales teams model for pricing things up, but we haven't really had a strategic conversation. So I want to do that. And it's a really good time of year. We're recording this in December. It's a really good time to have your annual planning, strategic planning, and make pricing a conversation around that. Let's start here. I wasn't even planning on starting here. I don't know where to start, though. I don't know how to have a strategic pricing conversation with my team. What do I do? That's what I love about this podcast, free consulting. Go ahead, Casey, solve my problems for me.
Great. Well, the answer, as all consultants give all the time, is it depends. Yeah. But I'm gonna give some specifics. Okay. So it a little bit depends on whether you sell a product or service. It depends a little bit on the frequency and magnitude of transactions in your business. It depends on, in other words, like if you're a digital marketing agency that closes, 20 big deals a year, then what good pricing strategy and execution look like are very different than if you're a distribution company with, 4,000 transactions a day with 200,000 SKUs and 100,000 customers, right? So one of those good strategy and execution leans a lot more on data in the second case. And in the first case, it's a little bit more first principles and sort of feeling our way through what good strategy looks and feels like based on what we know about our customer base, our products and services, et cetera. Those are two kind of extremes. There's lots of businesses more in the middle. They're not highly, highly, highly transactional, and they maybe don't have so few at bats that every single deal matters so much. But those are the kinds of things that can affect the sort of things that we're talking about. I think also how much repeat business we have, because a lot of times making pricing decisions boils down to risk. We don't want to lose a bunch of sales volume of customers that are buying from us today, versus going out to new customers with a new pricing model. I think we can look at things like what's happening with our win rate. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Is it going up or down or staying the same in different areas of our business? So you can use data to help point at some interesting things. I think even in absence, and I can send over, I have a list of things a strategic pricing meeting could.
I would love that. Talk us through that though now, if you don't mind. I would really like to hear like what, and I know there's different kinds of companies. I do want to talk about like B2B software, B2B professional services, construction or heavy machinery, direct to consumer products or retail. Like those are the categories that I've thought. I'm sure there's more, but I'd love to talk about some of the differences in pricing. But if you were to schedule a day, you own a company called Boost Pricing, agency, a consulting firm. Is that right?
It's a mostly training company.
Training. Okay.
Mostly training. We teach
so
people
if you were
as well.
have you ever facilitated a strategic session with leadership on pricing?
Sure. Yeah.
Tell me, either take me through that document that you just described, or tell me how you would approach a day like that.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we've done this in the past with clients, and we're doing more training than consulting now, but in the past I've done plenty of these. Essentially, like it's to start with like, what's the current state of our pricing today? How good or bad? Like if everyone in the, one of the things I'll ask everyone is like basically plot a piece of paper privately by yourself. Everybody, if you think about what, if one is we're terrible at pricing, our strategy is 0, we give away the farm, we have no discipline as a team, we discount out of control. If that's a 1, and a 10 is we're perfect. We are incredibly strategic. We're charging as much as we possibly can every deal and not a penny more, not a penny less. We're winning as many deals as we should win based on our value. Our team has structure and discipline and excellence around holding on to margin and not discounting from fear. What would you grade yourselves? Have everybody, write that number down and then say, like, what are 3 things that have you answer that way? Like, because nobody says 10 ever, right? So what are 3 things that are not right today that if they were better, that number would be higher? And then there is always stuff in that conversation that unfolds from there that is, one, that there's commonalities, there's differences. So that's interesting, right? Like Joe sees that the biggest problem is that the team is discounting, like, folding like a cheap suit. And Sarah sees that we're too one size fits all with our pricing, right? And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about that. There's commonalities. And generally it's almost like building an issues list from there. And then it's like, let's start talking about, let's start understanding. And then we're sort of prioritizing what we think might be an opportunity. A second question that is similar in generating conversation and next steps is, is our pricing high enough? I never ask, is it low enough? Because that is never the problem. Is our pricing high enough? Is it high enough everywhere on every product and service we sell to every customer? And if the answer to that is no, and it's always no, sometimes, some places, somewhere, why? What's missing? What's the obstacle? And those 2 questions generate 30 useful places to go for the next 6 hours. I think
I love that approach, by the way. It's almost like an NPS. Like how would you rate us? Let's start with a grade. The gold comes in that next question, which is, okay, what 3 things would you do to make your grade better? And that starts the conversation.
100%. And
Um,
what just sort of shining a light on my own business when as a consultant or as an outsider leading a session like that, I don't know what it is. I have some guesses. I often have assertions or hunches or hypotheses, I guess, about where there might be some bit pricing power that's not being exercised. There might be some leaks, but always 100% of the time, the people in the room know the customers better than I do, know the products better than I do, know the services better than I do, know the opportunities, know what's been tried. Now they have blind spots for sure, and it's my job to help kind of pressure test what they think they know about the way this works. Because sometimes there's tribal knowledge that turns out to be wrong or whatever. But it is this is the thing. People already know this stuff about their business. The biggest thing that's in the way is people are not sitting down for half a day and having this conversation. They're busy, and that kind of gets back to your initial insight from listening to me talk at that event. People are really busy trying to set the strategy for the business at a high level. They're really busy trying to sell a bunch of stuff, really busy trying to hire and retain talent, really busy trying to execute on the product or service. And the thing that is getting pinched is, are we charging enough for it? Are we excellent in our mastery of pricing in the marketplace? And the answer is always no.
what you started to say, so when you ask people to rate how we're doing, you listed off kind of off the top of your head a bunch of things. Are we getting as much as we can? Are we consistent in our pricing? These are some I was writing down. Can we explain our pricing? That's something I wrote down that you didn't say, but I know we have
there's a lot of questions I didn't say. I hit it.
Tell me some. Tell me some of those. What are other questions we should be asking ourselves?
Is our pricing granular and segmented enough? And is that segmentation properly tuned to how people value us? Is our pricing too granular? In other words, wild, wild west. Everybody pays a different price because the salesperson's really good at selling the boss on why this guy needed a better deal, right? Like the personality driven or human driven variation. Like variation in pricing in a B2B business is always true. Everybody doesn't pay the same price for the same things in a B2B negotiated business, generally speaking. The question is whether that variation is strategic or unstrategic. And strategic variation looks like we understand different segments of our customers. And I'm not necessarily talking about classical segments like, market vertical or size. It can be those things, but there can also be other kinds of psychographic ways to slice customers based on what they value and why. But are we strategically segmenting our customers and our products and services in a way that allows us to charge the most we can on the products and services that the customers value the most, to the customers that value them the most, knowing that customer A might value our stuff at, $100 a pound or $100 an hour, whatever, and customer B might value it at 120. If we're too one size fits all, we're going to set it at 100 because we're never going to be willing to walk away from volume where there's price sensitivity. So that means we sacrifice $20 an hour or $20 a pound on the other guy. If we set it at 120, we've lost sales that could still be profitable for us. I'm going to make up a cost, $50. Now we've walked away from $50 of margin on the first customer because we lost them because the price was too high. So the more granular we are, the more money we make because the riches are in the niches. The more one size fits all we are, the less money we make because our decision making tends to settle around the most price sensitive products and services we sell and the most price sensitive customers. So there's a whole bunch of questions around segmentation that I think are really valuable. And not just are we segmenting enough, but not too much. But is that segmentation then appropriately tuned to where that customer derives value? So another set of questions.
This is awesome. This is one of those secret awesome things that I never cared about. I never thought pricing was that interesting, to be honest. And I think a lot of people do. Yeah. I'm fascinated by all the intricacies here. And it got me thinking about a lot of things. Whose pricing I love and hate? And I want to hear your answer to that. Whose pricing you love and hate? The one I love, let me start with the one I hate. The one I hate is Verizon. My God. And now you tell me, I'd be curious what you think. Is it a strategy to completely and utterly confuse the customer with the pricing so that they just kind of pay it? Is that actually because I'll tell you, I look at my Verizon bill, I have no idea what I'm paying for. And I'm not going to call them because I know that's an hour and a half of my time, it's probably 45 minutes on hold trying to figure out. And then I get somebody who, may or may not speak English in a way that I can understand it. And next thing you know, I'm just hanging out and be like, you know what, I'm not
because it's only $50 and your time is worth more than that. And so who cares? You move on. Yeah. So yes, it's a strategy. It is not a strategy I endorse, especially not for people that are likely to be listening to this podcast because they're not running, one business in what is, largely monopolized. Like if you're Verizon or AT&T or Sprint or any of those guys, like there's relatively few nationwide providers.
Yeah, it's an oligarchy.
All the same. Right, yeah. Exactly. They're and the cost to an individual of their cell phone bill is small enough that they count on exactly what you just described, which is that the pain isn't worth it. And they're all the same. And so so no, don't do that. But can we learn lessons from it? Is there any wisdom that we can extract from it?
Is there? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yes, and I'll tell you what it is.
Thank you.
What we can do, there is a right way to do what they're doing that drives you crazy, which is, and let me just paint the opposite picture. We, as especially small businesses, have a love affair with transparency when it comes to our customers because we think that builds trust. Like we're going to be really transparent about what we're doing with pricing. We're going to be really communicative when it's time for a price increase. And that's what good partnership looks like. Yep. But we confuse transparency with partnership and we confuse opacity with duplicity. And I think that a lot of businesses could benefit from a little bit more opacity when it comes to their pricing.
What is opacity?
Not so transparent.
Okay.
Opaque. Yep. Being opaque.
Okay.
Being a little bit more a little less detailed in our conversations. And a good example is price increase time. So it's time to do a price increase in the business. Companies do way too much explaining. There's like an apologist attitude. We write letters. We sit in the boardrooms together. We run spreadsheets. We perseverate. We wring hands. We stress out for months. We over communicate like crazy. And then they'll roll out the price increase and most people don't even say anything. Yeah. And I have this example I like that helps illustrate the ridiculousness of this. If you're internet service provider, who, by the way, they stink too. They're just terrible. Like you pay for 500 up and,
they're all the same. They hang out at the same country club.
If they called you up and said, Dave, we're raising your internet service by $2 a month. And I just wanted to see if Tuesday would be a good time for me to come by and discuss this and explain our reasoning.
It is not. I'm not available.
No, I don't want to talk to you.
No.
Right? And while I have you on the phone, I just wanted to see if you have any questions about our price increase.
I don't.
You'd be like, do you like it? Are you happy about it? No, I don't.
Fine.
Like it. In other words, given a forum to complain about a price increase, people will complain about it. Having something shoved in their face more aggressively than necessary will generate price sensitivity where it otherwise wouldn't exist. So in this well-intentioned, but in my opinion, misplaced desire to be a good partner, we are generating negative response to something that otherwise could have been done. It's like, don't have a big sit down meeting of a phone call do. Don't have a phone call if a letter will do. Don't send a letter if a notice slipped inside the invoice will do. Don't do that if nothing is necessary. So we over communicate pricing a lot, not just with price increases, but that's an example of a lesson we can learn from Verizon. We don't need to tell everything. Line item level pricing on invoicing, for example, it's like usually that does more harm than good.
We I mentioned earlier, software company. Small niche industry. We serve associations at 300 some odd clients at this point. And there was a time a couple of years ago where like, maybe we should have an annual increase. No, we debated what should be. And so we didn't, Casey. We just charged people something and then kept charging them that.
Well, and in software, there's this really seductive thing, like every copy is free. So it's all, contribution margin. It's all like, it's all incremental. So who cares about pricing that much, right?
Well, the gross margin is high. That is true in software.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter because a big point of yours is like...
It doesn't matter, but that's what I hear. That is the seductive thing people think.
I know one of your soapboxes that you have a bunch of them, but one of them...
Oh, I do. Stick around, brother.
One of them is you don't charge people based on the cost. You charge people based on the value to them.
100%.
And I love that. So we started increasing our pricing by 5%. And very rarely do we hear from anybody. Now,
you know what that means, don't you?
We're not doing enough?
Correct.
Yeah.
Losses are an important part of an effective price strategy. If you're not losing customers over price, your prices are too low. Period, full stop, the end.
I'd have to break out a spreadsheet before I nod my head to that one. Like, so if you're increasing prices, say we go to 10% increase and we lose one client or two clients out of, I don't know, say we lose like 5 clients out of the 300 or so.
Right.
And, have to do the math and figure out how much we gaining from everybody versus how much we're losing from those.
Right.
And I guess we have to look at it from a revenue perspective and a profitability perspective.
Yes.
Revenue is important to us, as is churn. We want to make sure churn is low, especially being a software company, but at the same time, profitability is really important too.
Correct. And then there's these sort of intangibles that need to be looked at when it comes to being willing to let a customer walk away. Sometimes there's a really strategic logo. We don't want to lose them for a reason. It's not just down to dollars and cents, but I think what you just outlined is really important, which is start with the dollars and cents. Do the math. And if the math is we are slightly smaller, but much more profitable, then you have a business decision to make. The idea that, we want to lose 0 customers, we can lose 0 customers. You can do that. You can give it away. It's just not the best way to make the most money. And a lot of my advice and a lot of my sort of lens for this comes from maximizing profit. And that isn't always everybody's goal, right? Sometimes you're in a really mission-driven business where reach and helping the most people matters more than the profit, or you're trying to maximize, ARR or an exit or something. Like there are other things that can trump profit when it comes to the decision making. I just think we ought to make those trade-offs with our eyes wide open, not without having done a little bit of the critical thinking about it, which is another thing that we can do in those strategic meetings, by the way. And I just want to say one more thing about the meetings. We got away from that before I put this bow on it that I think is important. I think overthinking about how strategic and prepared and thoughtful and good that meeting has to be will stop people from having it. You don't even have to have an agenda. Get in a room with your key leaders and say, we're having a pricing meeting. When everybody says, what's it about? Say, I don't know yet. And you create it on the fly. If you got the right people in the room, you start with that question. How good or not are we today? And what's missing that could make us better? Yeah. That could be the entire agenda for the meeting. Don't think you have to have some wildly, perfect list of questions and strategic approach. Just focus on it more. Nobody's talking about it hardly ever.
Just start. Just do it. Just start talking. Yeah. Good advice. Going back to that price increase, I was thinking, so suppose we did increase 10%. If somebody complains, there's no reason why we can't remove that increase for them.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's not many organizations that are going to say, screw it, we're out, and just cancel without any kind of communication. They just say, look, we're not going to continue, or the price is too high, or we don't want to pay this. They're going to start the dialogue, I think, in most cases.
Especially in a B2B software company, because the nature of B2B software tends to be that this software is integrated into their processes in some fashion.
And there's a relationship too. It's not a consumer good.
Right. So it's unlikely, like you say, if somebody's upset about the price that they're punching out the moment they hear it, there's generally going to be an opportunity. There's an at-bat that comes from trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat if somebody's upset about the price tag. You can always make strategic exceptions. And this gets back a little bit to that thing I said about the one-size-fits-all problem. We a lot of times make price increase decisions around our most price-sensitive customers. So we think of the biggest 1, 2, 3, the big squeaky wheels, the vocal minority, the bullies, and we think, oh, we could probably get 5%. And that means somebody else would have paid us 7% more, and somebody else would have paid us 10% more, and somebody else would have paid us 12% more. So the more one-size-fits-all we are, even with price increase, the less money we make because it centers around those big bullies. So what if you have a tiered price increase based in how these people connect with your value and the stickiness and you can measure all kinds of different things and give them a red, yellow, green, or a 1, 2, 3, and these guys get 5 and these guys get 7 and these guys get 9. I mean, there's industries where that's problematic, and we can talk about that a little bit, but the 5 came from the team's comfort with who, can we get our customers to say yes to this in a monolithic way? And I would say, if you aren't having to make some strategic exceptions and roll some of it back, you left a lot of money on the table for the whole rest of the customer base. It's like, and by the way, you went from 5 to 10, which is great, but there's an infinite number of numbers between 5 and 10.
There's a friend of mine, I just saw him this weekend. He told me that one of his vendors was acquired by private equity last year, and this year they increased it. And I'm not sure what the service was. I can't remember that, but I was so shocked by this part. He said they increased the price by 300%. and they're going to continue with it. Yeah. Now, I guarantee they're going to experience some churn too.
For sure.
But that got me thinking, like, dang, 10% is not that bad. You know, think of private equity. They're not dumb. These guys, these are money people that come in and they're there to make money. And that's amazing that they can come in and now I don't know the details around that particular case, but it just goes to show, I think you're right. A lot of us are leaving money on the table.
One of my early consulting clients after I started this business was a SaaS, a B2B SaaS business. And they wanted some help making decisions around a price increase target. And after I dug in with them and looked at what they were doing and the value they were creating, I was like, this is underpriced by at least 100%. Like, you could double this price. And they were terrified. By the way, they had 100% renewal rate. They were so proud of it. And I said, that is not the good news story you think it is. 100% is not the goal in my book. If you are getting 100%, you are underpricing for sure. Now, I don't want it to be 50, but there's a lot of room in there. And I recommended 100% price increase, and their jaw hit the floor. They were horrified and terrified. I finally talked them into 50%. Guess how many customers left? 0.
50% price increase? And 0 customers left.
And they had so dramatically, and they were still sort of in a startup mindset, right? Yeah. And they had so dramatically underestimated how integrally valuable this product was inside the businesses of their customers. Were the customers happy about a 50% price increase? No, they stomped their feet and they threatened and they could. And by the way, they sell to some really big companies. They sell to some Fortune 100 companies. But there wasn't an alternative that did what this software did in the way it did it, and solve the business problems to the tune of millions of dollars per client. And it's like they're charging $150,000 a year for the software. It's like, you think they're walking away for 300? By the way, I think that's too low, but let's just start with something we can stomach. They were PE owned, by the way. The PE firm was a real big fan of my work.
I'll bet. I wonder if for a lot of organizations, once you're in the door, the price tag doesn't matter. Like, I think the price tag might matter upon making the decision, and I'm making this up as I go, but upon making a decision, the price is one of the variables that's taken into account. But once it's integrated and implemented into the processes of a big enterprise organization, I wonder, like, that's why you can increase it 50% and nobody really cares anymore.
And in many other less commoditized, more differentiated services spaces, because it's more about the problem you solve in a unique way for me than somebody else can. But in a more competitive and commoditized industry, say you manufacture bolts and fasteners, you're talking about, a 5-point price difference could be the reason that somebody switches vendors. If you're selling into automotive and you sell them, plastic injection molded glove box covers or whatever. I mean, there's a lot. And again, I know you hate it depends. I don't blame you, but that's where there's a lot of variation around how much pricing power we have with existing customers based on how competitive or commoditized we are. There's also a right way, because the last thing we want to do is sort of bait and switch people, get them in the door and then make them fall in love with us and then jack up the price. That people hate that. Everybody hates that. And at a certain point, if that is the strategy, if it's sort of like get in there cheap, buy the business, and then get in there until they're addicted to our service and then go crazy with the pricing, we will trip people's fairness flags, and people will do things that are counter to their own interest if they're mad. If they feel like you've been unfair, if you've been screwing them over, they will spend money to get rid of you. And if you've done that. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do all
There's a
stuff.
Black Mirror episode. Tell me if you saw this, where this woman, Rashinda Jones, is that her name, Rashinda?
Shonda Rhimes?
No, Quincy Jones' daughter.
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, she was in the episode, and she had some brain malfunction, some brain damage, and somebody put a chip in her head to fix it, and it was like a Verizon, like a future
Yeah.
version of Verizon. They put this, it was like Neuralink almost, and they put this thing in her head, and they're like, oh yeah, it's super cheap. And as soon as she got it in her head, they turned on ads. And like, oh, you want to get rid of the ads? Well, it costs this much more. And then they kept going. And then it was a bandwidth issue. And then it was like a region. And they kept charging more and more and more. And it was an awful. Every episode of Black Mirror is awful. If you haven't, do you watch Black Mirror? Have you ever watched it?
I don't. But
it's awful. Don't watch it.
No, I have enough stress in my daily life. I like to keep my TV light, man.
It's so stimulating though. I can't not watch it, but I hate watching it.
No, it sounds like I should stay away from it. I don't like stressful television.
Oh no, it's stressful and awesome at the same time.
I'll recommend it to my partner. He loves that stuff. I just can't watch it with him.
All right, Casey, here's one I actually really like how this organization does their pricing.
Okay.
Tesla. Here's why. I buy a car, I go into the app, I press a button, and I pay.
Yeah.
When I go to buy a Subaru, I'm sitting there negotiating with them like I'm at a tag sale. And we're negotiating pieces and parts and, when I'm going to get it. And there's all these levers that they're pulling. And I just feel like I'm getting screwed out of something. 100%. Whereas with Tesla, it's like, yeah, you want a car? Here's the price. They may have promotions, but here's the price. You do it or you don't do it. I wouldn't even know where to go to negotiate. You can't even pay. You cannot go to a Tesla dealership and actually pay them. What they'll say to you is like, glad you like the car. Get the app and you can buy it there.
100%. Yeah. The very first brand new car I ever bought was Saturn. Remember Saturns?
Yeah.
They had a similar thing. I mean, it was.
What do you mean, do I remember them? Are they out of business?
I think they are. I haven't seen a Saturn in a million years. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, when I say they were the same, they're not the same because part of what you're describing is not just the number, but also the process and the ease of the process and the customer experience. Tesla's got that nailed, right? Saturn, you still had to sit down with a finance manager and do all the paper, all that stuff, right? But there was no haggling around the number. This is the number you pay it. That's it. And that was really appealing to me as a buyer. So if, again, okay, let's zoom out and say, okay, none of us on this call are Ford or Tesla, right? But there are people listening who are saying, what is the lesson that can be learned there? Mm-hmm. And I would say that the lesson that can be taken from that.
I love how you do that, by the way. When I'm just kind of meandering through stuff and you're like, okay, what's the lesson to be learned here? You're a good tutor.
Yeah. People want to get some value out of this, I think, or maybe they just love listening to you, which is an entirely possible hypothesis. But I think one of the things that I love about my work, especially the speaking side of it and podcast appearances and stuff, is I got a whole bunch of weird knowledge about pricing, but how do I make it digestible so people can access it and use it in their business? So
lesson learned.
Back to Tesla and Ford or GM or whatever. Yeah. Any of the other guys, Jeep. The lesson we can learn from this is when people feel like there is a game being played and they aren't in control of that game, it kills trust. Because every person who's ever bought a car, other than places like Tesla or the old Saturn days, there is a feeling of if I'm a good negotiator, I get a good price. If I'm a bad negotiator, I get screwed, which makes nobody knows what the floor is. Nobody knows what's really going on. All those other guys are kind of like Verizon. I'll say what is the price for this car? And they'll be like, well, with your trade-in, it's only blah, blah, blah per month. I'm like, wait a second. How much is the car? Right. Well, if you I can't get a darn straight answer. What's the number? So I think this obfuscation, this unwillingness to be straight about things, and certainly painting a picture. Last time I bought a car before, I own a Tesla, by the way, but my last new car before that was a Honda. And They got, and I'm awesome at negotiating prices higher. I'm terrible at negotiating them lower. I'm not good at that. I don't enjoy it. It's
That's the wrong
stressful for
direction
me.
as a consumer.
Yeah, I know it's not good for me on a personal level, but I'm sitting there and so at least I know enough to say, can you do any better than that? Like it's about as far as I can push. I can't get
Could I
more aggressive.
pay more for that?
I say,
How
is
much?
that the best you can do? And he goes, where do you want the number to be? Do you know how much I wanted to stand up and walk out of that car dealership at that
Yeah.
moment? Because it told me there's no logic, there's no reason, there's no structure. There's just game playing. And I am not equipped to play this game well with this guy, and I'm gonna get screwed. And I was like, I want it to be as low as possible. What's the lowest number you well, where do you need me to be? I was like, I don't know, $10? It kills trust when people feel like there's a game being played. And so this is where I think there's a really important thing. And we'll go back to your software example. Say you change that from 5% a year to 10% a year. And some some small percentage of your customers come back to each year and say, Dave, we love your software, but there is no way, that is not in our budget. That doesn't line up with da 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 da. And you say, okay, well, get in light of these things that you're telling me, and in light of our long-standing partnership, we want to be a good partner to you. We can offer, extend a discount on this price increase, reduce it to only 6% this year. And in exchange for that, either XYZ comes out or
Another year in the
yes,
contract.
a longer contract, 100% payment up front. Introduce me to the president of the other division of your business who won't take a call with me. Let me put a testimonial on my website, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
A trade of something maintains price integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I use integrity here not in a moral sense, more in a structural sense. It's sort of like the build a house, right? You take something out from the one side of the foundation, the house tips over. If something comes out over here, it's got to come out on the other side as well. You've got to trade to maintain trust, because unearned discounts hurt trust. And transparent and clear pricing that is not gameable builds trust. So that's a case for the one size fits all strategy, which Tesla does. Every single consumer buys at the same price, unless there's a promotion, in which case every single consumer buying during the promotion pays the same price. Most B2B businesses don't have this one size fits all, and I don't necessarily advocate it. But if there's variation, it ought to be strategic, not human driven.
There's something I learned from Verizon, actually, as much as I hate their pricing, is if you want that free phone, if you want the bonus, if you want $10 off a month, I don't know what they do, but you're committing to another 2 years. And I've used that with my clients too. So I got an email from a client that was renewing, and they had a hard year in their organization. And they're like, look, we love the software. We're struggling to meet our budget. Can you help us with the pricing at all this year? And we had our increase. I said, I'll remove the increase, but I'm going to ask you for a commitment for the next 2 years. And so it was a trade-off. It worked. Yeah. I mean, it's great. Gives them something, gives us something. It's a fair trade.
If I can make plain what the lesson there is, let the customer choose what's important to them.
Ooh, tell me more.
That customer, what was important to them was cash outlay.
Yeah.
They have had a tough year. They didn't want to write that bigger check this year. Yep. What was less important to them is the flexibility of a shorter contract term. They chose cash flow over flexibility.
Yep.
And you made that offer available to them. And that is like what I love about the idea of what a good negotiation looks like is there is, if somebody says, I can't do X, okay, I can do 10% less than X if these things are like, so if let me pick an example. Let's say I'm a consulting company and I have this solution and it costs $10,000 for this such and such audit, right? And a customer says, I don't have 10, I have 8. If I say, oh, okay, I can do it for 8, then we've killed trust, because now they're thinking I should offer 7, right? We're back to that wheeling and dealing thing that people hate, right? Instead, if I say we can do it for 8, if these things are true, and in your case, it's like, okay, we're getting a longer contract. In a consulting firm's case, it could be, we want to be able to feature your testimonial on our homepage, and we need you to pay 100% upfront, making those two things up, right? You essentially create offers that allow people to choose what's actually important to them.
Yeah.
While still protecting your organization structurally from bad margin, bad business deals. You could say, Yes, we're willing to work with you on this lower price, but we need 2 extra years of contract. And if the customer doesn't like, because sometimes customers say that stuff just as a tactic. They're just trying to get a lower price. They will say whatever to get a lower price. And if you say, okay, yeah, we can do that lower price, but it's going to be 2 extra years. Sometimes when you do that, the extra money magically appears in the budget because they don't want to sign up for 2 extra years because that's the flexibility is more important to them than the money. So this is about creating structures that allow them to elect what's really important to them.
Something, I'm not sure if I heard this. I'm listening to your book. I'm not quite done with it, but you do a good job because you narrate that too in Audible, right?
Yes. Well, I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, so it was my dream come true reading my own book in a studio.
I'm not sure if it was in the book or actually it might have been in your TED Talk. I don't know. It was one of these places I heard you say that pricing often comes from a place of fear, and there's lots of head trash and emotion in there. I know from watching my team sometimes, respectfully to my team, we can be quick to discount. I don't think as much anymore, but there was a time when I think our team was rather quick to discount. Talk to me about that concept of pricing coming from a place of fear as opposed to one of confidence.
Well, in a nod of love and light to your team, most teams are too quick to do that. And not just in B2B software, in every industry. And I would say that the reason we're too quick to jump when we get price pressure is that we're making decisions from fear. I would argue that the dominant emotion present for most pricing decisions in the world and most pricing negotiations in the world is fear.
Mm.
We're pricing not to lose rather than pricing to win. We're pricing from fear, not from confidence.
What do you mean pricing not to lose?
Pricing not to lose the deal. It's very
Yeah, you're afraid of getting
to strategy to pricing versus a very confident offensive approach rooted in our value.
an offensive approach might be looking for the things that are important to them and
100%.
shaping the deal around their interests and needs.
100%.
Do they want to pay on a monthly basis? Are they looking for a shorter term contract as opposed to the price point?
Not just that, those are all deal elements. I would argue that the best way to do this is to understand how the software, using this example, solves a business problem for them and really understanding the importance of that business problem and not just the dollars, the time, the heartache, the hassle, but also like all the emotional stuff that goes with that for the person who has that problem to solve. If we have done an excellent job at building trust that our solution is the best to address that, price becomes very secondary. What I would say to this is 0 people on this planet want to save money to get a bad result. Nobody wants to save money to get a bad result. What is the corollary truth from that? People are willing to spend more to get a good result. But so many people in a sales seat, not just salespeople, but you sell, I sell. Like everybody sells all the time, whether we're in a
trust I'm going to get a better result from most people. Like I just don't believe that product's going to give me a better result, and so I'm not willing to pay for it. That's typically the problem.
Person hasn't done a very good job, which is really the heart of all of this. Is that we're solving a problem that isn't about price with price. Customers saying this is too expensive, but that's not what they really need.
It's about the value, right?
I don't trust. You're telling me this is going to be 3 times better than the other guy, but I don't believe you. I don't trust you yet, right? So somebody says this is too expensive and we hear the words, it's too expensive, and we believe that. But what they're really saying is it's too expensive for the value that I perceive that I'll get.
Yeah.
And so we solve the it's too expensive part by trying to throw discounts at it. But the real problem is I don't perceive that you're better. I don't perceive you're good enough. I don't trust that it's better. And if we invested more effort and energy in that, the price would be a non-issue.
So Casey, man, I love this stuff. All right, so you just turned it from, instead of discounting, find out what's the value, what's the meaning of value for them.
For sure.
So suppose I'm selling something to my main contact at a prospect of ours. Now, in our business, and I think in a lot of businesses or industries, it's a committee-based decision.
For sure.
Like there's not a single person anymore, generally speaking, 100%. Making decisions. So I go to this person and I convince them and they're bought in. But now we call those mobilizers. Now they need to mobilize the rest of their team.
Right.
And I
They
think
got to go convince the CFO of their company and the whoever, right?
So we have to we have to give them the tools they need to convince the rest of the team.
100%.
And if it's a complicated sale, that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're not really talking about pricing anymore. We're talking about sales methodology and activating a mobilizer and teaching them or coming up with the right marketing materials so that the language is simple and clear and something that could be repeated, and having the right story. So at our event where I met you, Casey, we had Matthew Pollard talk about storytelling.
Right.
And the importance of being able to tell that story consistently over and over again. And that plays through to the buyer being able to tell the story internally. And if we can do that effectively, then that allows us to price more effectively.
100%.
Because the value proposition can be communicated more clearly. It all fits together, man. It's not easy.
Because the CFO, Sam, hasn't done the deep work that Joe, the operations manager, has done to understand the intricacies of the differences between these solutions. And so because Sam doesn't understand those differences, it's very hard to look at a piece of paper and understand it. So what does Sam do? Sam looks at the price tags. And it's like, why the heck would we pay these guys $20,000 more per year when these softwares do quote unquote the same thing? And they don't do the same thing, and they're not the same. And Joe understands it, but Sam doesn't. And you just in articulating that this issue exists for your business, I would give you an A+, because so many businesses do a poor job of understanding that the sales does not stop when we get our champion on board. And you think about how hard it is. If you were to hire
maybe halfway.
Maybe. Yeah. It depends on the size of the organization, how bureaucratic they are, how many other people they have to sell. If you think about if you were to hire a salesperson tomorrow, brand new, fresh off the street, doesn't know the first thing about your business, how long does it take them to be really, really, really effective at telling your value story?
9 months, 6 months.
Right. Yeah. And then you think, how good of a job are we doing educating Joe, our champion in the business, right? Like you're not spending 9 months of full-time education with this person. So I think too many, again, just the fact that you recognize this as a problem tells me you're head and shoulders above most companies, because people aren't investing in that. They're spending all their energy and all their calories selling Joe. And then they let Joe go figure it out. But guess who's not an expert in selling your stuff? Joe. And this is where, I love that you mentioned the materials, because you've got to arm Joe, because Joe is never going to be as good at telling your story as you are. So you got to make it easy for him to sell. And I'm a really big fan of really visual value tools, because people don't read. Picture's worth $1,000. And what is the visual? What is the best, process or a waterfall calculation? It's like whatever. Like, how do you tell the story really simply so that Joe can get 5 minutes of Sam's time, the CFO who's too damn busy, to help him understand that, yes, this is absolutely worth $20,000 more per year than the other guys, because it does this, 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 and this, which solves all these problems, which saves all this money.
I'm still smirking because you just said a picture's worth $1,000. I caught that. That didn't slip by me. So we talked a lot about.
I got a million of those cheesy little jokes.
We talked a lot about software, but there's, I think there's a lot of professional services where, in EO, for example, where people are pricing out projects.
Sure.
Whether it's construction or a consulting gig. I mean, if someone were to hire you, training, such a good example. I mean, you do training on pricing. Right. Someone were to hire you in training, I'm like, okay, I could do YouTube, I could read a book, I could hire Casey, or I could hire someone else that could do it. So, like, where do you start when it comes to pricing? How does professional services do it differently than software? I don't even know what my question is, Casey.
I think I know, and if I don't take it in the right direction, help steer me.
There's a difference between professional services and software.
There is and there isn't. And by there isn't, I mean it's all still rooted in value. What problem do you solve? And why does it matter? And how much does it matter?
And why are you worth $10,000 more than a different trainer?
Right. Or worth more than zero and sticking with the problem I already have, living with it, right? Why should I do anything at all? Not just choosing between alternatives. It's also like, do I even need to solve this problem, or can I keep suffering? Because in a training space, like, the alternative is often do nothing. So how do I convince someone to write a check for something that they don't have to write a check for? This is a discretionary spend. Well, I help them see how much it's costing them to stay on their current path.
So that's
where I don't think it's very different between professional services and software, because it's the same thing. And in the current path might be an incumbent software supplier, right?
So we put an addition on our house several years ago, and part of that was including some landscaping. And so we were looking at different landscapers, and the one we hired has been around a long time, and he was more expensive. And so what was valuable to me was somebody that was bringing the experience with them, and that's what we're paying for. Now, as it turns out, I think, in hindsight, I think the reason he was more expensive isn't necessarily because he was better. It's just because he had so much business, he could be more selective. He only had a certain amount of capacity. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to charge more until people say no. And so that's where I let what I thought was important to me trick me into paying more for a service that I could have gotten for much less.
Well, it's very interesting. There's a couple, there's layers here. I could spend an hour on that one thing alone. I'll try to keep it brief. One is that there's something called the price quality effect, which is where we infer quality from price. It's expensive, it must be good. It's cheap, it must be garbage, right?
Yeah, I've heard you. This is in your book. This is a great part of your book. Yep.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, you talk about the Safari, and in the Safari, you know, like you had 3 Safari options, and one was really low, and you're like, screw that. I'm not going to be gorilla meat.
No, thanks. Yeah, exactly. So your belief that you were going to get a better result was informed in part by the fact that the price was higher. It wasn't the whole picture, but
I understood the price was higher because of the experience and how long this organization had been around.
And I would say experience.
I equated it to quality.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yep.
The experience you don't care about experience, you care about the outcome.
Yeah.
If there was a brand new landscaping company that had been around for 6 months, but you had complete confidence that they were going to do. Let's imagine they just did your neighbor's yard, and it's the most amazing thing you've ever saw.
And it looks great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And he is some young kid, and he's just hungry and hardworking and too dumb to charge for what he's worth.
Yeah.
And he
drinking a Pepsi with his shirt off.
Right.
Wasn't that a Pepsi commercial in the 80s? Like this kid raking the lawn.
All the pictures in the 80s was a young kid with their shirt off. It was an inappropriate time.
Do you imagine that now? Like the high school kid with his shirt off mowing the lawn and Stacy's mom watching him?
Moms, yeah, no. So if you were completely confident in the value of somebody that had not had that level of experience, I don't think it's experience you cared about. I think experience to you was a proxy for a good outcome. And this is again where so in a services business, the price quality effect is where we use price as a piece of data about quality, because people can't charge a lot if they're not good, right? And if it's too cheap, it must not be good, right? 100% of the people in listening to this have put the more expensive version of something in their cart in a store or online shopping because they wanted the good stuff, right? So in a services business, this is so important because people cannot touch and feel your outcome. You can share case studies, or you can show portfolios, but they can't get a sample of your service in their business, right? So if you're trying to hire a consultant or a trainer, you can't know what it's really like until you've hired them and gone through the process. And that's why, how we price is a part of our brand. It tells the story in part. And I think at the end of the day, if we go back to something I already said, nobody wants to save money if it means getting a bad result. Everybody's willing to pay more to get a good result. Then the only thing that really matters is convincing them that we're the best one to solve their problem. If we've done a good enough job of that, we can charge more than the other guy every time.
Casey, you met my son, I think, at the event we're at. So he has Hawaiian. I talk about him a lot in here because he's an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, and I admire him for right out of college going off and doing his own thing. I wish I did that sometimes. So he's got this thing, thekonabrand.com. It's Hawaiian flannels. And so he had a bad experience with tariffs this year. it was terrible. It was really, really frustrating where he ended up paying 70% tariffs for the product he had ordered. And he had zero choices, that or go out of business, period,
Right.
straight up. And in fact, it was the day tariffs were implemented that they landed in Boston at the airport. And so, like, out of the blue, it was another $30,000 that he had to pull out of his back pocket or somebody's back pocket to pay the tariffs. Anyway, having said that, he struggled with this, but decided to increase the price of his shirts. They were $85 for a long, long time. And so he's doing the math and like asking ChatGPT about the psychology of pricing and the numbers and so on. And it's amazing what he learned in this chat with ChatGPT. He got real ballsy and like way more than I would have.
Yeah.
And he increased the price to $98. And I was like, what the fluff, man? What are you, like, you're crazy, girl, you crazy is what I said. And he had zero drop off. Like,
Oof,
no
he needs to go to
comments.
109.
Well, okay, so that's scary going into the 3 digits, like going above 100.
Yeah, I
is
mean,
scary.
I don't know what he should have done, but I'm not surprised at the result. I'll say that.
Yeah,
Not
it's
surprised.
incredible. But so that made up for the tariffs and then some. But the point, I don't know what my point is. It's just an interesting pricing story where oftentimes we're so afraid. It's that thing about fear. We're so afraid to charge more that we don't. And we kind of throttle back. Well, what if somebody says no? Maybe he lost a few sales, but his margin is so much better and he's going to sell out of his inventory. So might as well sell it to people who value what he's selling.
100%. And this is where, again, like the advice I might give to an industrial manufacturer might be different than I would give to someone selling Hawaiian flannels, but zero people need a Hawaiian flannel. Right?
Yeah.
It's not insulin. It's
That is
not
facts.
So who buys them? What are the,
Rich middle-aged women,
right?
by the
There
way.
you go.
That's who buys them for the men in their lives.
Guess what the difference is between 98 and 109 to a rich middle-aged woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Zero, right? There's something called the zone of indifference, which is where we start to perceive meaningful difference. So like if you went to buy a car this weekend and the one that you loved was $52,000. It was the perfect one, had all the right bells and whistles, whatever. If it were $52,010, it would be the same. Like your brain does not even think of that. It's not a different number.
Yeah.
52,100, 52,200. Now I don't know where the price starts to be like, that's a different number, but we erase differences that we don't perceive as meaningful. And that zone of indifference is really different depending on what the product or service is and who is buying it.
The zone of indifference. Yeah.
If I remember Zach asking me, do you have any, he was asking me about some of the pricing psychology stuff, which matters more. The psychology of things like ends in a 9 or like just the weird, like the games, the pricing games, that stuff matters a lot more in a B2C business because human beings are making decisions. Well, even in businesses, we're making them mostly on emotion, not fact. We decide on emotion, justify with fact. But we don't feel the need to justify with fact when we're buying as consumers, especially on something like a flannel shirt.
And it's spontaneous. That's oftentimes it's an impulse.
So the research holds up in a B2C space for some of those things, like when it ends in a 9 or when there's a charm pricing or luxe pricing. And he asked me for a book recommendation and I gave him one, and I don't know if he had a chance to read it or not, but there's all kinds of like studies done on consumers over decades about pricing, games to play. But I would say in this case, what comes to me the most, because most of my experience is in B2B, the zone of indifference on a flannel Hawaiian shirt sold to rich middle-aged women is a big number, is a big wide. I would expect it would not probably fall off. You could add probably $40, $30 to. I don't know how nice the shirts are. I'm sure they're very nice. And if people want it, what's the number that they would suddenly not buy it? I bet it's a lot higher than he thinks. It's certainly higher than you think, because he went bolder than you went, and then nothing happened. Nothing bad happened.
Nothing happened. It was crazy.
Fear is what caused, like, oh my gosh, what if all my sales go away?
Have you ever seen a scenario where um, it was very clear an organization is charging too much.
I knew you were going to ask me that question.
Really? Why?
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. I've never seen a company make a mistake in that direction. Not once. Now it's happened.
Have you ever seen a company go too far?
Yeah.
Where sales drop off?
I've seen businesses that have had a slight downturn in win rates for certain, like in like a chunk of their business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I would say in those cases, largely they didn't really understand segmentation well enough. They didn't understand who wouldn't value it at that price.
So you started, and we're going to end with this, but you started your session, your presentation on the value of increasing your price by 1%, and it's really interesting. Like, I hadn't thought about this. Well, why don't you explain it to me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, and we spend some time in our training programs with this too, because this is math that everybody knows when they see it on paper, but nobody thinks about, and it doesn't govern any of our decision making, and it should. And it says, if you are a company with a 5% bottom line, that means for every dollar that your customers give you through direct and overhead costs, 95 cents go back out, and we keep 5 cents. If we're able to do a 1% price increase, which just about every business on the planet could do and lose virtually no sales volume, revenue goes to $1.01. Does not cost us any more to produce our products and services. So we drop that penny to the bottom line, which means the 5 cents turn into 6 cents, which is a 20% change to profit.
Crazy. It's like a magic
20%.
trick.
It's a magic.
What you just did.
5%, if you can get 5%, you've doubled your bottom line, 100% improvement to profitability. And this blows people's mind. This, I'm talking about, and an EO audience is a good example. This is a room full of very successful, savvy, financially educated people whose jaws are on the floor when I put that number on.
I know. It's like a magic trick. It's like, where'd the penny go? Oh my God. So I know, I love that little machine. You put the penny in, go, yeah, and it's gone. Is the same true? I think you and I talked about this. I think the same is true of expenses. For every dollar that you save, so in other words, if you pay $1 less for something, that equates to, if you're at 20% margin, that equates to, $5 of revenue. So cutting $1 of expense is the same as getting $5 of revenue.
Yeah. So like pricing, improving cost, saving expenses has a bigger impact than a commensurate increase on revenue, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point you're making. What I will say, and I think I said to you that day when you asked me about it, is yes, every dollar saved drops the bottom line, just like an extra dollar earned drops to the bottom line in terms of pricing, but as a percentage. So if you did a 1% price increase, that's a penny on the bottom line. If you reduced expenses by 1%, it's not a penny, because the expense isn't the dollar. The expense is only 95 cents. So as a percentage, it has a smaller impact on the bottom line. Hear me loud and clear. I'm super pro saving money and spending less, for sure. It just doesn't have it does not have the leverage, the magnitude of impact that pricing does. And a lot of times, especially in 2025, it's not like there's a whole bunch of fat to trim in most businesses. People have done a lot of, tightening of the belt over the years. And so saving 5% on expenses can be really, really painful. Whereas, what that might translate to in terms of how much price we'd have to get, we might only have to get 2.5%. And that's easy for most businesses.
It's hard to save your way.
And it's harder. So it's not that I don't believe in doing it. It just isn't as impactful, and it isn't as easy.
Casey Brown, if people want to get you to speak to their team, like I think you'd be great to come in and talk to a sales team. But if there's if there's EO chapters out there, or somebody just wants to connect with you and have you speak with them one way or another, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So for anything speaking related, I have a website. You mentioned it at the top of the hour, caseybrown.com, but you could just send me an email at casey@caseybrown.com. It's real tricky, CAFEY. But also, if anybody's interested in training programs for their teams, what we do is really expose customer tactics and then arm salespeople and other customer facing folks to be profit guarding powerhouses, and we arm them with the methods and messaging and tools and confidence to win more deals at higher prices. And that is at boostpricing.com. Boost like the energy drink, pricing.com, and with contact form, or you can do info at Boost Pricing. And then again, you mentioned the book, but that's another place to find stuff.
Fearless Pricing.
Fearless Pricing. And I'm also really active on LinkedIn and put out a lot of free resources there. So anywhere from zero to a bunch more, I can, dollars, I can help you.
Heck yeah, Casey. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
It was a delight. Thanks a lot, Dave.